I told you the man who became Iron Man once woke up in a jail cell, broke, addicted, and forgotten? That the same guy Hollywood called uninsurable would end up leading the biggest movie franchise on Earth and walking away with $75 million paydays? Sounds like a comic book, right? But this story ain't fiction. It's raw, messy, and way darker than the trailers ever let on. Before Robert Downey Jr. was cracking jokes as Tony Stark, he was cracking under the weight of addiction. Before the red carpets and billion-dollar franchises, he was being dragged into courtrooms, staring down judges who flat out told him he might never get his life back. This is the story of how RDJ went from county blues to custom suits, from mugshots to Marvel Crown Jewel, from rock bottom to the red carpet. And make no mistake, this isn't some Hollywood fairy tale. It's the ugliest comeback story in showbiz, and that's exactly why it's legendary. So let's rewind. Picture Robert as a kid.
How long have you two been married?
That's me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing up in a wild, bohemian New York household. His dad, Robert Downey Jr., was a filmmaker knee-deep in the 70s underground movie scene. Translation? The house was chaos. Cameras, scripts, smoke-filled rooms, artists drifting in and out. Little Robert was basically raised on movie sets. By 5, he'd already been shoved in front of a camera. By 10, he wasn't just acting. He was experimenting with things no kid should ever touch. His dad later admitted he even let young Robert try drugs, thinking it was just part of the culture. That moment would end up haunting them both. But here's the twist. RDJ wasn't just some troubled kid. He was gifted, like scary gifted. He had that unnatural charm and timing you can't teach. By his 20s, he was landing real roles. Movies like Less Than Zero, where he didn't just play an addict, he embodied it. Critics called him the next Brando. Casting directors whispered, future legend. And when he stepped into Chaplin in 1992, he snapped. His performance as Charlie Chaplin scored him an Oscar nomination. He was barely 27. On the outside, it looked golden. On the inside, the spiral was already tightening. Fame amplified everything. The pressure, the access, the chaos, and for Robert, that meant more drugs, more partying, and more demons. Hollywood saw a rising star. What they didn't see was how fast that star was burning out. By the mid-90s, the headlines shifted. No longer brilliant actor. Now it was arrested again. One incident had cops pulling him over with heroin, cocaine, and even a handgun in the car. Another time he stumbled into a neighbor's house and passed out in their kid's bed. It was shocking. It was sad. And it was just the beginning. Judges gave him ultimatums. Studios stopped calling. Hollywood didn't see potential anymore. They saw liability. And just like that, the Golden Kid turned into a tabloid punchline. The world thought he was finished. But as you'll see, Robert Downey Jr.'s story was only getting started. By the late 90s, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just dabbling in chaos. He was drowning in it. Arrest after arrest, headline after headline, the public stopped asking about his movies. They only asked, what did he do this time? In 1996, cops pulled him over with heroin, cocaine, crack, and a handgun sitting in the car. That charge alone should have been enough to bury his career, but it didn't stop. Weeks later, he stumbled into his neighbor's house. Not for a party, not for a role, he literally passed out on their kid's bed. Yeah, imagine waking up to Iron Man snoring in your child's room. The judge didn't find it funny. You have a drug problem, they told him. This is like a loaded gun in your mouth. Sooner or later, you're going to pull the trigger. Rehab became a revolving door. Check in, swear he'd change, relapse, repeat. And through it all, Hollywood watched their golden boy collapse in real time. Somehow, even in the chaos, RDJ kept landing gigs. His most famous comeback attempt then was Ally McBeal. He joined the cast in 2000, played a quirky love interest, and instantly stole the show. Critics loved him, fans loved him. He even won a Golden Globe. It looked like he'd finally figured it out. Then, boom. Another arrest, another relapse. This time, the producers had no choice. They fired him mid-season. Imagine being so good you win a Golden Globe.
And the Golden Globe goes to Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes.
It's so unreliable you get canned. That was RDJ. By 2001, the industry stamped him with a death sentence. Uninsurable. Translation, no studio would pay to cover him on a set. He could deliver the best performance of his life, but if he flaked, the movie would collapse. Nobody wanted that risk. Downey's once glowing career was now radioactive. Casting directors whispered, too dangerous. Tabloids shouted, washed up. Even fans who loved him started bracing for a headline that read, Robert Downey Jr. found dead. Then came the hammer. In 1999, after blowing probation again, the judge said, enough. Robert was sentenced to nearly a year in state prison. Not county jail, state prison. Inside, he wasn't Tony Stark. He wasn't Chaplin. He was just another inmate trying not to get swallowed by the system. Later, he described prison as like living with a gun in your mouth and you know the trigger's about to get pulled. That's not a metaphor. That's a man who thought his life was over. Hollywood didn't want him. New faces filled the spotlight. By the time RDJ got out, his name was more punchline than prestige. Think about that. An Oscar-nominated actor, called one of the best of his generation, reduced to gossip columns and mugshots.
And the Oscar goes to Robert Downey Jr.
He wasn't just off the A-list. He wasn't even on the list. Here's where most stories end. Actor burns out, loses everything, fades into memory, but Robert Downey Jr., he wasn't done. He was about to claw his way back, not with luck, not with pity, but with grit. After years of being the punchline, Robert Downey Jr. had two choices: fade into irrelevance or fight like hell. Spoiler, he fought. The early 2000s weren't glamorous. No blockbuster premieres, no screaming fans, just small, low-budget projects where the stakes were simple. Show up, stay clean, crush the role. In 2003, he landed a part in The Singing Detective, a quirky indie flick. The movie didn't set the box office on fire, but critics noticed. They saw the spark again, that quicksilver timing, that intensity, that damn, this guy still has it vibe. Then came 2005, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, directed by Shane Black. On paper, it wasn't some mega studio project, an offbeat noir comedy, half crime thriller, half satire. But when Robert stepped on that set, something clicked. His chemistry with Val Kilmer was electric. Every line snapped, every scene popped. Critics didn't just clap, they stood up. Suddenly, whispers started. If he can stay sober, this guy could lead a blockbuster. Hollywood wasn't forgiving, but it was watching. Off-screen, RDJ was grinding. He got serious about recovery. He leaned on therapy, martial arts, and meditation. He started rebuilding relationships, especially with his new wife Susan, who became his anchor. Hollywood had burned him, but she believed. And sometimes, one believer is all it takes. By 2006, Downey was stringing together steady roles. Zodiac put him beside Jake Gyllenhaal. Good Night and Good Luck reminded people he could handle prestige. These weren't Marvel blockbusters, but they proved one thing. Robert Downey Jr. could show up, stay locked in, and deliver. And for a guy the industry had written off, that was huge. By 2007, Marvel Studios was cooking up something wild. They wanted to launch their own cinematic universe, starting with a character most people didn't even know of: Iron Man. This wasn't Spider-Man. This wasn't Batman. This was Tony Stark, a rich genius with a drinking problem and a sarcastic mouth. And guess who fit that description a little too well? Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. There was a problem. RDJ was still a risk. An addict, a liability. Casting him as Iron Man could sink Marvel before it even got started. But director Jon Favreau saw something nobody else did. He saw Tony Stark. And that gamble, that crazy, desperate gamble, would flip the whole industry. Robert Downey Jr. was about to suit up, building suspense. Nobody trusted him. Insurance companies said no, studios laughed, even fans doubted, but Favreau doubled down. He argued that RDJ wasn't just the best choice, he was the only choice. Because here's the truth, Tony Stark's whole arc, flawed, genius, self-destructive, redeemed through purpose, was Robert Downey Jr.'s life. And when art mirrors reality that perfectly, it's lightning in a bottle. Still, Marvel was gambling the house. If RDJ slipped, the entire Marvel universe would collapse before it even launched. But if he delivered, the comeback would be bigger than anything Hollywood had ever seen. And guess what? He delivered. In 2007, Marvel Studios wasn't the juggernaut it is now. They were broke. No Disney safety net, no billion-dollar war chest. The plan? Build a cinematic universe from scratch. And the very first movie would decide if Marvel lived or died. That movie was Iron Man. Marvel needed a star. Somebody who could carry an entire franchise. Studio execs threw out safer names: Tom Cruise, Clive Owen, Hugh Jackman. But Jon Favreau, the director, wasn't having it. He fought like hell. He told the suits, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. To them, that was insanity. RDJ was still considered a walking risk. Too much baggage, too many arrests. Insurance companies didn't even want to touch him. But Favreau wouldn't back down. He argued that Stark's flaws, ego, addiction, redemption, were Robert's life story. Marvel finally gave in. They cast Downey. It was a gamble so wild that if he messed up, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe would die before it even began. Robert knew it too. This was his last shot. If he blew it, there'd be no more lifelines. Production began and Downey showed up locked in. No missed calls, no excuses, just pure magnetic performance. On set, he was Tony Stark. The improvisation, the cocky swagger, the humor, all of it poured out naturally. The cast and crew couldn't deny it. RDJ wasn't just acting, he was channeling. When Iron Man dropped in May 2008, the world wasn't ready. Critics called it fresh, sharp, and unlike any superhero movie before. Fans flooded theaters. The box office exploded, over $580 million worldwide. That might not sound massive next to today's Marvel numbers, but in 2008, it was insane. And it wasn't just the movie, it was RDJ. His face, his performance, his redemption. That one gamble saved Marvel. Without Iron Man's success, there's no MCU, no Avengers, no Endgame. Downey didn't just reboot his career, he rebooted the entire superhero genre. Here's the crazy part. For Iron Man, Robert reportedly made $500,000. That's peanuts for Hollywood. But the movie hit, sequels rolled, and contracts got renegotiated. By the time he suited up for Avengers Endgame, his paycheck had ballooned to a jaw-dropping $75 million. From county sales to global premieres, from $500,000 scraps to $75 million blockbusters, RDJ wasn't just back, he was bigger than ever. But with that fame came pressure. The spotlight was hotter, the critics sharper, and every move he made was watched. Would he slip? Would he hold? The next chapter would prove whether Robert Downey Jr. was a one-time miracle or a Hollywood legend. Spoiler, the man went supernova. Avengers assembled, box office shattered, and RDJ became the beating heart of the MCU. But with superstardom came new challenges. Fame this big isn't free. So how did he handle it? That's part 5. And trust me, this ride is only getting crazier. Jail cells, courtrooms, rehab, to red carpets, billion-dollar franchises, and $75 million checks. That jump wasn't luck. It was risk. It was gamble. And it changed everything. After Iron Man blew up, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just back. He was everywhere. The MCU wasn't built yet. But suddenly Marvel had a heartbeat. And that heartbeat was RDJ. 2012, Avengers hits theaters. For the first time, audiences saw Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye sharing one screen. It was a gamble, again. But this time, the gamble turned into box office fireworks. Over $1.5 billion worldwide. Billion with a B. And who was front and center? The guy who once couldn't even get insured, Robert Downey freaking Jr. Marvel had a lineup of stars, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, but none of them carried the weight RDJ did. He wasn't just Tony Stark, he was Marvel. The jokes, the bravado, the emotional core. Audience locked into him first, and Marvel knew it. Remember how Iron Man only paid him $500,000? Yeah, that changed fast. By the Avengers, RDJ negotiated back-end profits. Translation, he got a slice of the box office apple pie. The result? Around $50 million for one movie. And as the MCU grew, so did his checks. By the Avengers Endgame in 2019, his payday soared to $75 million. But it wasn't just about money. RDJ changed how people saw redemption. Think about it. A guy once written off as hopeless became the cornerstone of the biggest film franchise on Earth. For fans, it wasn't just a performance. It was proof that no matter how bad you screw up, you can fight your way back. Off-screen, Downey became known for being grounded, witty, and laser-focused. He wasn't the party animal anymore. He was the professional. Crew members said he kept sets light, cracking jokes and keeping morale high. Other actors looked up to him, and Marvel leaned on him as the anchor. By the time Endgame rolled around, RDJ wasn't just a star. He was the heart of the MCU. When Tony Stark snapped his fingers in that final battle, fans around the world broke down. Kids cried, adults cried, theaters shook. And in that moment, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural symbol. $75 million for Endgame, hundreds of millions total across his Marvel run. But the real payday was something money can't buy: redemption. RDJ proved that a broken career can rise, that mistakes don't have to define the ending. By 2020, Downey's name was stamped in Hollywood history. Fans didn't just cheer for Iron Man, they cheered for Robert because they knew the real arc. They knew the jail cells, the mugshots, the near collapse. They saw the Phoenix rise. But here's the thing, fame this big does come with shadows. Paparazzi, pressure, the fear of slipping back. Robert Downey Jr. had climbed the mountain. Now the question was, could he stay there? Part 6 is where the pressure gets real. From forgotten addict to the highest paid actor on the planet. From $500,000 paychecks to $75 million blockbusters. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just come back, he redefined what a comeback looks like. Being Iron Man wasn't just a role, It was a responsibility. When your face is plastered on billboards from New York to Tokyo, when kids dress up as you every Halloween, the pressure is insane. But Robert Downey Jr. knew it. Fame looks glamorous. The red carpets, the premieres, the luxury. But underneath, it's messy. Paparazzi camped outside his home. Reporters hunting for a slip-up. Millions of eyes waiting to see if the old RDJ would return. Imagine trying to live normal with that microscope. So how did he not crack? Simple. Discipline. Downey leaned on a lifestyle that kept him focused. Martial arts, yoga, meditation, therapy, and family. His wife, Susan, wasn't just a partner. She was his anchor. They built a system that kept him from spiraling. Here's what really hit different. RDJ didn't just cash checks. He gave back. He started environmental initiatives. He backed tech-driven projects to fight climate change. He visited children's hospitals dressed as Iron Man, making kids fighting cancer believe in heroes for real. That wasn't for PR. That was personal. But even with the fame, even with the discipline, the same question haunted him. What if I slip? An addiction doesn't vanish. It lurks. It whispers. RDJ admitted in interviews that sobriety isn't a finish line. It's a daily fight. And every day he chose to keep swaying. At the same time, Downey didn't let Marvel box him in. He branched out. Sherlock Holmes in 2009 smashed the box office. The sequel did too. He proved he wasn't just Tony Stark. He was a box office magnet. Here's what makes him different. He treated Hollywood like a chessboard. He launched his own production company, Team Downey with Susan. They weren't just taking roles, they were creating them, producing, developing, building long-term plays. By the late 2010s, RDJ wasn't just a superstar. He was the poster boy for second chances. College speeches quoted him, self-help books cited him. Fans used his story as proof that life isn't over when you hit bottom. But being a legend has a price. Pressure doesn't fade, it stacks. Every premiere, every headline, every fan demanding more. RDJ handled it with grace, but the weight never truly left. The Marvel era made him rich, but what happens when the mask comes off? What happens when Iron Man dies and RDJ has to move on? That's the next chapter, and it's just as wild. From chaos to control, from liability to legends, Robert Downey Jr. didn't just survive fame's fire, he learned how to stand inside it. And when the Marvel chapter closed, he faced a new question. Could he succeed beyond Tony Stark? Part 7 is where that answer unfolds. Spoiler, the ride ain't over. When Avengers Endgame closed in 2019, it wasn't just the end of a saga, it was the end of an era. Tony Stark died on screen and audiences sobbed, but off screen, Robert Downey Jr. faced the hardest question. Who was he without the suit? In 2020, he rolled out his first big post-Marvel project, Dolittle. A family adventure with talking animals, heavy CGI, and RDJ as the lead. On paper, it looked like a safe bet. In reality, critics torched it. Audiences shrugged, it bombed. For anyone else, that flop might have been devastating. For RDJ, he just kept moving. Because here's the thing, Robert Downey Jr. doesn't play for one movie. He plays for the long game. Through his company, Team Downey, he started backing projects with depth. Documentaries, series, environmental work. He wasn't chasing just paychecks, he was chasing legacy. Then, in 2023, he flipped the narrative again. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, a grim, serious awards-level film. RDJ stepped in as Louis Strauss, a cold, calculating political figure. No quips, no superhero suit, just raw, surgical acting, and he crushed it. Critics called it one of his best performances ever. Audiences were stunned. In 2024, he walked away with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Think about that. From jail cells to Oscars, from unhireable to unstoppable. Post-Oppenheimer, RDJ proved he wasn't chained to Marvel. He could still surprise, he could still dominate, and he wasn't slowing down. More films, more projects, more risks. At the same time, Downey leaned harder into philanthropy. His Footprint Coalition, launched in 2019, backs AI and robotics for environmental solutions. Translation, Iron Man went full real-life Tony Stark, using his tech to save the planet. And that's the wildest part. The man who once couldn't save himself now spends his fortune trying to save others. Kids, fans, the environment, that's not just redemption, that's legacy. From courtrooms to billion-dollar box offices, from mugshots to Oscars, Robert Downey Jr. isn't just an actor anymore, he's a symbol. But here's the kicker. What does he do next? Part 8 is the answer, and it's about the future. The rise, the fall, the resurrection. Robert Downey Jr. lived through all of it, and instead of fading, he turned it into something bigger. A reminder that comebacks aren't just possible, they're legendary. Now, all eyes are on his next move. So here we are, decades after those mugshots, decades after the jail cells, Robert Downey Jr. stands on top of Hollywood. But the question hangs, what's next? He's hinted at stepping back from superhero roles, not because he hates them, but because he knows he can't top perfection. Tony Stark's ending wasn't just cinematic, it was poetic. Try and outdo that? Pointless. Instead, RDJ's future looked like creation. Producing, developing, backing filmmakers who were once like him, overlooked, doubted, underestimated. Through Team Downey, he's setting the stage for the next generation. And let's not ignore the obvious. Dude's literally turning into Tony Stark. His Footprint Coalition is all about using AI, robotics, and tech to heal the planet. Not movie magic, real innovation. The same guy once running from cops now funds scientists trying to stop climate collapse. Tell me that's not wild. But the real legacy isn't money or Oscars or even Marvel. It's the story. The reminder that no matter how far you fall, you can climb back. That jail cells aren't the end. That broken careers can be rebuilt. That sometimes the biggest gamble pays off the loudest. The world will always remember Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. But here's the twist. The real story is bigger. It's not about a billionaire in armor. It's about a man who refused to quit, who turned his lowest chapter into his loudest victory. So what's the takeaway? It's this. Second chances are real, redemption is possible, and sometimes the person everybody bets against ends up winning the whole game. Jail bars, courtrooms, rehab halls, mugshots, cut to, red carpets, Oscar stages, Marvel premieres, smiling kids in Iron Man helmets. Same man, different story. Robert Downey Jr. went from jail cells to $75 million paydays, but the money isn't the headline. The headline is that he lived one of the wildest comeback stories Hollywood has ever seen. And if he can rise, maybe so can you.